Can you tell me what brought you to Chicago from California?
Yes. Wow. I was actually thinking about this the other day. It's been about 11 years. Yeah, I was just saying I came from Los Angeles about 11 years ago. I was just thinking about it the other day because it was about this time of year. And I originally came for grad school. I did a joint MBA and Masters of Science in Environmental Management and Sustainability at IIT. I was really interested in sustainability at the end of undergrad, but didn't really have any context or knowledge about it. So I thought, hey, let's do a grad program and see if I can take anything away from this. And I did. And I didn't really know much about Chicago at the time. I just knew I wanted to be in a big city, and Chicago was one I had never been to before. And I started biking about 9 months in, and really fell in love with the city once I was able to explore it.
Yeah, Chicago is a really bike-friendly city. It's very flat, on a lot of hills, like I imagine there to be in Los Angeles.
Yeah, LA is more just spread out. It's huge. Like it's multiples the size of Chicago. So it never really seems reasonable or prudent to try and get around by bike. Like you can get around within small parts of LA, but I mean, like being a person and trying to live a very social life in Los Angeles feels like it would be almost impossible to do by bike. Whereas in Chicago, it's eminently reasonable, easy, and feasible.
How did you get involved with?
How did I get involved with the co-op?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I originally moved to Chicago, I lived in Logan Square. I lived just north of Logan, closer to Western. And as I was starting to get interested in sustainability, my roommate at the time actually suggested that I check out the Dill Pickle. Just by living there, I'd always gone to the Strachan Van Til, which I don't think exists anymore, which is like a big grocery chain that is over by Elston. And he suggested, like, hey, you're really interested in sustainability. Like, you should check out this place. So I looked it up. I went in and kind of like walked around and was like, what is this place? Oh, it's cool. It's small. It's got some interesting stuff. And I bought a little bit of stuff. And then I slowly got more comfortable with the store. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, this really aligns with my values and, my interest in trying to, be a force for improving and kind of continuing sustainability in the community. So, I slowly got involved from there. I think I started shopping there more regularly. It became my regular grocery store very quickly, even though I moved to Lakeview right after that. So it became a little bit more of a commute. It was about a 30-minute bike commute each way. But it was something I was happy to do. And since then, I've never really considered getting groceries anywhere else. And so I got involved as a lender as part of the capital campaign to help finance the new store back in 2015, 2016, somewhere around that time, and was really looking for an opportunity to try and put my money to work doing something good in the community. And it's actually quite hard to do that, believe it or not. So the opportunity to invest in the Dill Pickle was really exciting. And then fast forward a few years, and now I'm on the board as of the start of this year. So it's something that I've toyed around with a lot and been really appreciative of others who have kind of made the commitment of time and energy to the co-op, and I'm happy to do so now.
Yeah, it seems like you're circle, like a bicycle wheel. I actually remember running into you a few years ago, maybe around 2015, on my bicycle. You were also on your bicycle, and I think you were biking. Would have been about 5 years ago.
Most people I ran into. Okay. Yeah, it likely would have been in and around Lakeview. So yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's such a great way to just like see people. Like I very frequently run into people around the city that that I would never have done so if I was in a car, or much less likely if I was on public transit. So it's always nice to be able to see you and others around town on the bike.
Indeed. Well, you are a big advocate for sustainability. Can you explain to everyone what sustainability is?
Yeah, so sustainability means a lot of things to a lot of people, but when I think about it, my real thought is around kind of trying to make it so that we can continue to live on this planet and be in, balance and harmony with nature in a way that we are not destroying things. We're not destroying the Earth's ability to maintain life and, diversity on the planet, and, both humans and animals and other things. But at a functional level, when it comes down to it, is, we're living a little bit above our means in terms of our use of resources and the Earth's ability to provide them and to, to deal with the pollution that we create. So trying to find ways to help people live a more sustainable life is more about trying to help them reduce their impact, so that, ideally the type of life they live, is good for the planet and allows them to continue to do that forever in a way that, is not detrimental to the planet, or is at least at a level at which an equilibrium can be maintained. So, I mean, it's challenging. Sustainability gets caught up in, politics, obviously, and our economy and the kind of economic system we have. And I find it interesting. I'm really passionate about trying to help people find ways to live, more sustainably in their lives, reduce their environmental impact. And in the last 10 years, I've tried to help my friends and kind of coworkers and others around me kind of find opportunities to do that, whether it's by, getting them to bike, helping them to install energy efficient lights in their house or place of work, start composting, eating vegetarian. And I constantly talk people's head off about all these things. And I'm sure my friends and family have heard it hundreds of times and just like, oh, like, can't he just give it a rest? But, it's such an important issue to me. And it really is fundamental. It's not to say all the other issues on the planet are not really important, but, when it really comes down to it, the ability of the Earth to sustain life, the kind of basics of sustainability, feels like it's such a fundamental issue that all the other issues feel secondary. It's not to say they're not important. And the good thing is, if we can solve a lot of sustainability issues, they're often really tied in with equity issues. They're tied into education and health issues. So it's not as if we address this in isolation. We haven't done anything for other stuff. A lot of it is really intimately tied together. And I appreciate that, but it's also very hard. Like, you're trying to create really structural change in society, going from an extractive society and one in which, we're create a tremendous amount of waste and pollution, to one in which it's more circular and which we're able to kind of live within our means. So it's very hard and it's a lot of work, but it feels very important. It feels like the type of thing that one should devote their life towards this kind of end, and continue to kind of be an advocate for in everything that they can do. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah. I mean, sustainability is so necessary. How we treat the Earth is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. It's a macro versus the micro. And if we can't sustain the Earth, then the Earth can't sustain us. So homeostasis is necessary, like internally and externally, for our survival. I was going to follow up. Do you have a few quick tips that people can take towards sustainability?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at one point in my life more involved in social media than I am now. And I think somebody was like, you should post a list of like the best sustainability strategies on Facebook. And I was like, no, like, people see that stuff all the time. Like, it's not necessary. And I think I ended up posting a list of like what I consider like the top 5 or top 10. And so it was huge, and people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm like, literally, like, you didn't know this stuff? And it's like, I think there's a couple of things. There's stuff that's more feasible, and there's stuff that's more that's more impactful. I think the more impactful stuff, living, in a city, is probably stuff like trying to reduce air travel, being able to take trains and public transit and others if you're trying to go places. I know it's hard. I myself often travel for work, and it's, probably by far and away the biggest impact I have. Eating vegetarian, I know, is also a rather challenging thing, but it's a huge impact in terms of, avoiding, especially factory farmed meat, but kind of generally meat overall. Yeah, and I mean, the simple choices we make in our homes in terms of how we light our homes and heat our homes and, cool ourselves. And I mean, some of these things are small, like turning off the lights when you leave a room, or, putting in LED light bulbs, but, small actions done literally hundreds of thousands
or motion
times.
Sensor lights.
Or motion sensor lights. God bless technology. Yes. And stuff like biking, honestly. I mean, it's great if you can find a way to do sustainability things in which you actually improve your life. Like my life is so dramatically improved by biking. You know, it's so much more enjoyable. I never get to the point where I hate my commute and I like, oh, I wish I could go there, but the trains or my car and seeing traffic, like I never say that. It's like, oh my God, I love being out in the world. So I think it's trying to find those things. Ideally, it can be a win-win. But yeah, I mean, those types of things like avoiding air travel, avoiding cars, avoiding meat. I mean, being as energy efficient, energy conservationist as you can. I think those are the big things. I mean, being prudent in other stuff like trying to minimize, your purchases of new things and fixing stuff rather than kind of looking to continue to buy new things wherever possible. All really impactful, but all things in my mind that like it's easy to say, it's hard to do. And I find the kind of key to helping people is really trying to facilitate and understand like why have they not done it. It's not like my telling somebody who's eating meat like, oh, you should eat less meat because it's bad for the environment. Like they're going to be like, oh, I'm startled. That's amazing. Like I'm going to change my life like this. Like it's very hard. So it's rather than trying to preach to people, kind of taking a more design-centered approach to it of like, why haven't you done this? Like, what is the impediment to doing this? Like, oh, like my kids like meat, or like it's so easy. I grew up doing this, or I don't know any recipes. And like once you start to get in some of the details, you can start to think like, oh, I could help you shift that by providing a little bit of extra support or helping you access these programs. I think that's the key. I mean, it's easy to just go on social media and be like, why is everyone cutting down the rainforest or whatever, or like throwing their trash or not recycling or whatever. But it's much more impactful in my mind to kind of talk to people to understand why they're not doing it and then try and think of like, what can I do to help facilitate it?
I'm back.
Oh, excellent. I was just singing about being all by myself.
What are the biggest challenges being on the board and a member owner of the Dill Pickle?
That's a good question. I think it's to some extent where the kind of like vision and the dream meets the reality and challenges of things. It's something I find common in most of my pursuits, kind of having very high-minded, lofty pursuits, especially around sustainability is, there's the kind of like vision and dream of like the archetypal way something happens and it's going to be perfect and easy and everyone's going to be on board and there's not going to be any issues versus the reality of like messy like change and helping things move forward. And I kind of pride myself of sitting kind of in the middle between like purists, and people who are kind of realists. And I think you need to be both a kind of purist and perhaps an idealist would be a better way to say it. And somebody who's a realist, like you have to be able to see the vision of what can be, but also be willing to kind of like dig into the details and make hard decisions and think about how you can move things forward in the real world. Because, you can't just be a person with like only the highest minded vision of things and unwilling to kind of work at the hard details of making things a reality. So I think that's some of the challenges of being on the board is like, I love the concept of co-ops and cooperative, businesses and the economy, but in order for a cooperative business to work, like it needs a lot of things to go right. And a grocery business is very hard too. Like it's a very low margin business. So just trying to kind of help steer things and do what I can to facilitate things improving. And, both from I think, like the store's financial position, the different things, I think from a sustainability perspective, for instance, of the store that I would love, for instance, like I would really love to just like be able to shop in an entirely like plastic free manner, but like it's really hard to do that. And like, COVID didn't particularly help with that because everything needed to be like packaged and wrapped. And I'm really happy, for instance, that the bulk section is open. But it's those kinds of things. It's like, okay, like the spirit and the vision of the co-op moving in one direction and doing the best to be a caretaker of that and to try and push things forward, but also realizing like, I don't know everything. Like I have my perspectives and trying to engage both, employees, management, owners, other stakeholders, and get a sense of like, what do other people want? Because the board is not intended to be like we do make decisions on behalf of the store, but it's not intended to be like a part on its own. It's intended to be the representatives of, these broad stakeholder groups and trying to make things happen. So I think that some of the challenge is just, you have a lot of different voices in the room. And that's great. Like, you want that. You want to be able to pull from and kind of leverage all the best things. But when not everyone is kind of on the same page about the best way to move forward, it just becomes a bit challenging. So I think that's the reality of any kind of representative group, and kind of a democratic function, is that, like, yes, in theory, democracy works really well, but like, you also have to be able to parse through different voices and kind of ultimately reach some sort of decisions. I think it's just the reality of trying to help an organization succeed. It's, yes, been very challenging, but also very rewarding. I think I, in particular, really value a deeper understanding of how things work. And I don't appreciate the kind of like child's version of like what things look like, and that we tell each other in the kind of make-believe world we live in. Like, I want to dig into the details, because the details are really important with things, and the details of the co-op are extremely important. So being able to see like what are the challenges and how can we improve them is great, because I didn't really have a great insight on that from the outside. And I didn't really spend much time going to board meetings or other stuff beforehand. I feel like now I should have, now that I'm actually inside of it. It's fun. It's fun to dig into the details and to work with the fellow board members and employees and the managers and the owners to try and help the co-op to continue to thrive and exist for the long haul.
Thanks for doing what you're doing, Brock.
My pleasure.
It's much appreciated. So then my last question is, what advice would you offer to anyone who's interested in running for the board election with Dill Pickle or any co-op in general?
I guess my feedback would be, don't be intimidated by not having done it before. Like, I had never been on a board of anything, and people had asked me to do it for a long time, and I was like, no, I don't have time, or like, what do I have to offer? Like, I've never worked in the grocery business before. Like, I work in sustainability and social impact, like, and I'm sure they already know what they're doing on that front. So like, what do I have to offer? But honestly, what I appreciate now, having done it, is that organizations like the Dill Pickle, other cooperatives, other similar kind of impact oriented organizations really need people to step up to be able to say, like, I'm willing to invest my time and energy in helping to make this organization work, because the organizations don't work unless a sufficient number of people are willing to do that, to kind of help through challenges that always come up, are very frequent in types of organizations like this. And the more people who you can lean on, the quicker you're able to get through it, and vice versa. The fewer people you have, the more challenging it becomes. So don't feel like you have nothing to offer. Somebody who's willing to put time and energy into it is greatly appreciated. And there's never enough of those types of people. So if you feel like you're a person who supports the mission and is willing to invest a little bit of their time and energy, regardless of what background or skills you have, your time and energy will be supremely valuable and really appreciated. So I would say, be willing to give it a shot. It's a fun group of people, and it's a meaningful experience and a meaningful job. And the co-op is worth it, and we all want to see it succeed. So it certainly needs as many people as it can to get behind it.
I second that. It takes a village or a community.
Well said. Yes, I like the village idea.
Well, that concludes my questionnaire, Brock, unless you have anything else you'd like to add or share.
I was going to make one additional thought around the sustainability piece, which is about being a nag to people. Like, nagging people is like the key thing to getting people to do anything. Like, the number one reason people do anything is because people close to them, who they value in life, like, nag them to do things that they know they should, but it's like, oh, I'm busy. Like, so what if I sign up for solar this week, or what if I do these light bulbs, or what if I start composting? It's like, it's another week, and it's another week. But if somebody's like, why haven't you done this? I thought we talked about this last week. Like, when are you going to do this? They're like, all right, just shut up. Fine, like, I'll do it. Just stop bothering me. So I honestly find
the word accountability versus nagging. Holding people accountable.
Exactly.
I think that's a better way of putting it.
Yes. Well said. More artfully stated. Thank you. Hold people accountable, continue to be a source of inspiration in their lives, and remind them that, that they can make a difference. And then, yes, hold them accountable.
Well said. Thank you, Brock.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Good to talk to you.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye.